I stood in my sister Olivia's kitchen on Thanksgiving Day, holding my plate of turkey and stuffing, watching as the successful members of my family gathered around her elegant dining room table. The tablecloth was imported lace, the china was Wedgwood, and the crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier light. But there wasn't a place setting for me. The dining room is for successful people, Olivia sneered, adjusting her Cartier bracelet. You can eat in the kitchen. That's more appropriate for your status. I glanced at the kitchen island where my plate sat alone. Through the doorway, I could see my parents already seated at the main table, pretending not to notice their younger daughter's exile. My brother-in-law Bradley, a junior partner at his law firm, smirked as he poured expensive wine for everyone except me. If only they knew that I owned the building where both Bradley and Olivia worked. Let me back up and explain how I got here. 5 years ago, I was working as a commercial real estate analyst at a mid-sized firm. The job was fine, but I saw something my colleagues missed. The downtown business district was about to explode. Tech companies were moving in, driving up demand for office space. But the old buildings needed serious updating. I took every penny I had, my savings, my 401k, even my emergency fund, and formed Vista Properties LLC. My family thought I was crazy to leave a stable job for some risky scheme. Another one of Sophie's impractical dreams, my mother had sighed at Sunday dinner. When will you grow up and get a real career like your sister? Olivia, who had just been promoted to senior accountant at Marshall & Reed, nodded sagely. Not everyone can handle corporate success, Mom. Some people just aren't cut out for it. What they didn't know was that I had already secured investors for my first property acquisition. I had spotted a neglected Art Deco building in the heart of downtown, the Kingsley Building. It needed work, but the bones were solid, and the location was perfect. The current owners didn't realize its potential. I bought it for $12 million, using a combination of investor funds and a carefully structured loan. My family thought I was working as a small-time real estate agent, showing apartments to college students. I let them believe it. The renovation took 8 months. I modernized everything, the lobby, the elevators, the electrical systems, while preserving the building's historic charm. The tech companies came calling before we even finished construction. Then came the coincidence that would make this story so deliciously ironic. Marshall & Reed, my sister's accounting firm, was looking for new office space. Their lease was ending, and they wanted something prestigious, something that would impress clients. The Kingsley Building was perfect for them. Of course, they never knew that the owner they were negotiating with, the mysterious Vista Properties LLC, was actually the sister Olivia loved to dismiss as a failure. They signed a 10-year lease for 3 floors. The day Olivia proudly announced at family dinner that her firm was moving to the most prestigious address downtown, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to laugh. But I wasn't done. Over the next 4 years, I acquired 6 more properties in prime locations. Each one was carefully chosen, beautifully renovated, and quickly filled with high-paying tenants. My net worth crossed $100 million last year, though my family still thought I was barely making rent. I kept driving my old Honda, wearing off-the-rack clothes, and living in a modest apartment. Not out of necessity, but because I was curious to see how long my family would continue treating me with condescension. Which brings us back to Thanksgiving. I sat at the kitchen island, eating my turkey in solitude, while listening to my family discuss their impressive careers. Bradley was bragging about his corner office in my building. Olivia was talking about her firm's prestigious address, my building. My phone buzzed quietly, a text from my property manager. Inspection complete on Marshall & Reed floors. Multiple code violations found. Should we proceed with lease termination warnings? I smiled, typing back, hold until Monday. Let them enjoy their Thanksgiving. Sophie, my mother called from the dining room. Since you're in the kitchen anyway, could you bring us more wine? I stood up, walking to the wine fridge. Behind me, I heard Olivia stage whisper to Bradley, "At least she's good for something. Someone has to do the serving." I grabbed a bottle of their precious wine, remembering the lease termination papers sitting in my office, already prepared with my signature. A signature they would see in exactly 1 week, when they learned that their prestigious office space was no longer available to them. "Here's your wine," I said pleasantly, placing the bottle on their table. "By the way, how do you like the new elevators in your building? I heard they just got upgraded." Oh, they're wonderful, Olivia gushed, not even looking at me. Much better than what you must have in your sad little apartment building. I bit back a laugh. I had personally selected those elevators, right down to the marble flooring and brass fixtures. They cost more than Olivia's annual salary. More turkey? My mother asked Bradley, completely ignoring my presence now that I had served my purpose. Speaking of buildings, Bradley said pompously, "Did you hear that Vista Properties just acquired the Preston Tower? Now that's a successful real estate company, not like some people's little rental agent jobs." I nearly choked on my water. I had closed that deal yesterday, $50 million for one of the most iconic buildings downtown. The announcement wouldn't be public until next week. "How did you hear about that?" I asked casually. "I have connections," Bradley boasted. "High-level business information you wouldn't understand." I nodded thoughtfully, pulling out my phone again. Another text from my property manager, "Preston Tower closure complete. Congratulations on the acquisition, Ms. Walker." "Sophie, if you're done hovering," Olivia cut in, "the kitchen needs cleaning. We successful people would like to enjoy our dinner in peace." I returned to my exile in the kitchen, listening to them congratulate themselves on their accomplishments. Through the window, I could see my driver waiting patiently in my Bentley, hidden around a corner where my family couldn't see it. In 1 week, they would learn that the sister they banished to the kitchen owned not just their building, but half the premium office space in downtown. Their lease termination notices would arrive on expensive letterhead, bearing the signature of the owner they'd been paying rent to all along. Sometimes success isn't about proving people wrong immediately. Sometimes it's about waiting for the perfect moment to show them exactly who they've been looking down on. 1 week after that humiliating Thanksgiving dinner, I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of the Kingsley building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city I largely owned. On my desk sat 2 stacks of documents, lease termination notices for Marshall and Reed, and a second set for Bradley's law firm. My intercom buzzed. "Ms. Walker, the courier is ready to deliver the notices." "Send them out," I replied, checking my watch. 9:15 a.m. Right about when Olivia would be settling in with her morning coffee. I pulled up the security camera feeds on my monitor. Camera 12 showed Olivia's office, where she sat smugly reviewing files. Camera 14 showed Bradley's corner office 3 floors below, where he was probably billing clients for hours he didn't work. At exactly 9:30 a.m., the courier arrived on their floors. I watched as identical envelopes were delivered to both offices. Olivia opened hers first, probably assuming it was something routine. It wasn't. I zoomed in as her face transformed from casual disinterest to shock to pure panic. She grabbed her phone, probably to call Bradley. On camera 14, I watched him answer, then frantically tear open his own envelope. My phone started ringing almost immediately. I let it go to voicemail, enjoying the show on my monitors as Olivia paced her office, face growing redder by the minute. Then she did exactly what I expected. She called our parents. I switched my office phone to speaker and dialed my mother's number. She answered on the first ring. "Sophie," she sounded breathless. "Thank goodness, something terrible has happened. Olivia and Bradley just got eviction notices from their building. They need your help." "My help?" I kept my voice neutral. "What could I possibly do?" "You work in real estate. You must know someone who can help. They can't lose their offices. It would ruin them." I leaned back in my chair, watching Olivia's increasing panic on the security feed. "Tell them to call the building owner. I'm sure Vista Properties would be willing to discuss it." They tried. No one will connect them to the actual owner. "Please, Sophie. I know we're not always kind to you, but they need help." "Interesting," I mused. "Last week I wasn't successful enough to eat dinner with you. Now I'm suddenly useful." Silence on the other end. "Tell them to come to the top floor of their building at noon," I said finally. "The owner of Vista Properties will meet with them." "The top floor? But that's the executive suite. They've never been allowed up there." "Exactly," I smiled. "See you at noon, Mom. Don't be late." I spent the next 2 hours watching the chaos unfold on my security feeds. Olivia made dozens of calls, each more frantic than the last. Bradley paced his office, probably realizing that no other premium building downtown had space for either firm. What they didn't know was that I owned those buildings too. At 11:55, my security team alerted me that my family had arrived in the lobby. I watched them huddle by the elevators, Olivia, Bradley, and our parents. They looked nervous, probably never having been invited to the mysterious top floor before. Send them up, I instructed. The elevator doors opened directly into my office suite. My assistant met them with a professional smile. Ms. Walker will see you now. Walker? My mother frowned. But we're here to see the owner of Vista Properties. The doors to my office swung open. I stood behind my desk, enjoying their expressions as they took in the vast space, the prestigious view, and finally, me, Sophie. Olivia's voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing here? Welcome to my office, I said calmly. Please sit down. We have some matters to discuss. Your office? Bradley sputtered. This is the owner's. Yes, I cut him off. I am the owner. Vista Properties is my company. Has been since I bought this building 5 years ago. The silence was absolute. My mother sank into a chair, her face pale. My father seemed to have stopped breathing. That's impossible, Olivia finally managed. You're just a small-time real estate agent. I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall behind me transformed into a digital display showing my property portfolio. 8 premium buildings, including their precious Kingsley building, with a total value exceeding $400 million. While you were mocking my career choices, I said quietly, I was building an empire. While you were bragging about your prestigious office address, you were actually my tenants, and while you were making me eat Thanksgiving dinner alone in the kitchen, I was signing the papers to acquire the Preston Tower. Bradley's jaw dropped. The Preston Tower. But that was Vista Properties. Everything is Vista Properties, I confirmed, and Vista Properties is me. I pulled out the lease termination notices. Your firms have violated multiple building codes. According to your lease agreements, that's grounds for immediate termination. You can't do this, Olivia whispered. We're family. Family? I laughed. Was I family when you banished me to the kitchen? When you called me unsuccessful? When you treated me like your servant? My mother stepped forward. Sophie, sweetheart, we didn't know. That's the point, Mom. You never bothered to know. You were too busy worshipping Olivia's mediocre career and Bradley's junior partnership to notice that I was building something extraordinary. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over my city. I'm not terminating your leases. They let out collective sighs of relief. But, I turned back to them, I am tripling your rent, effective immediately, and you'll be moving to different floors. Those corner offices you're so proud of? I need them for tenants who don't treat people like second-class citizens. Triple? Bradley choked. That's impossible to afford. Then I suggest you start looking for new office space, I smiled. Oh wait, I own all the premium buildings downtown. Funny how that works. Olivia started to cry, her mascara running. Please, Stuffy, we'll lose everything. Like you lost your humanity, your kindness, your ability to treat family with basic respect. I sat back down at my desk. You have until the end of the day to decide. Triple rent in smaller offices or find space in the suburbs. Either way, I expect you'll be more careful about judging people's success in the future. And one more thing, I added as they turned to leave. Next Thanksgiving, I'll be eating at the main table. In fact, I think I'll host in my penthouse apartment. The view is spectacular. After they left, I watched on the security cameras as they walked back to their soon-to-be former offices. Their shoulders were slumped, their arrogance finally shattered. My phone buzzed with a text from my property manager. New premium tenant interested in those corner offices. Should I schedule a showing? I smiled, remembering all the times Olivia and Bradley had bragged about their prestigious corner views. Yes, I replied. Tell them they're available immediately. Sometimes success isn't about proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about letting them discover just how wrong they've been, preferably while sitting in an office they didn't know you owned. That evening, I drove home in my real car, a Rolls-Royce Phantom, to my real apartment, a 2-story penthouse overlooking the city. On my coffee table sat the formal invitation I'd have printed for next year's Thanksgiving dinner, complete with assigned seating. Olivia and Bradley's seats, by the kitchen door, of course. After all, some people need to learn what it feels like to be kept away from the main table. I'd spent 15 years cleaning the offices of Vertex Technologies, watching from the shadows as the company grew from a scrappy startup into a $200 million tech powerhouse. Every night, I'd empty their trash bins, vacuum their plush carpets, and wipe down the glass conference tables where million-dollar decisions were made. To them, I was invisible. Just Manuel Reyes, the night janitor who barely spoke English. What they didn't know was that I spoke 5 languages fluently, held an MBA from an overseas university, and had been investing nearly every penny of my modest salary into their company stock since the day they went public. It wasn't that I was hiding my background deliberately. It was simply that no one had ever bothered to ask. In their world, a janitor was just a janitor, a function, not a person with dreams, intelligence, or ambition. My investment strategy had been simple. Live frugally, save aggressively, and invest consistently in a company whose inner workings I understood better than almost anyone. While executives came and went, I remained, observing patterns, listening to late-night conversations people had when they thought no one was around, and reading discarded documents that revealed the company's true health beyond the polished quarterly reports. My first stock purchase had indeed been modest, just $5,000, nearly all my savings at the time. But year after year, I increased my position, especially when I knew the stock was undervalued. During the financial crisis of 2008, when panic selling drove Vertex's stock to record lows, I took out a second mortgage on my small home and invested everything. The executives were buying vacation homes. I was buying their company, piece by quiet piece. By 2023, Vertex Technologies had reached a critical juncture. Their groundbreaking security software had captured significant market share, but mismanagement and excessive executive compensation had eroded profits. The founding CEO had retired, replaced by Elliot Warner, a slick salesman with a Harvard MBA and expensive tastes, but limited technical understanding of the company's products. Under Warner's leadership, the focus shifted from innovation to cost-cutting. Talented developers were laid off while the executive team expanded. The company's stock had stagnated for 3 years despite the booming tech market. Longtime employees whispered about their concerns, but publicly, Warner projected unwavering confidence. I watched it all unfold as I emptied his trash can each night, finding discarded presentations about declining product quality and growing customer complaints. I saw the emails he printed and then discarded about competitor advances that threatened Vertex's market position. And most tellingly, I noticed how the executives were quietly selling their personal stock holdings while telling employees and shareholders to keep faith. Something needed to change, but as a seemingly powerless janitor, what could I do? The answer came when I learned of a vulnerability few others recognized: the company's ownership structure. Vertex's founding CEO had maintained a 40% ownership stake, kept in a family trust. Upon his retirement, rumors circulated that the shares would be sold to provide for his comfortable retirement. The board, loyal to Warner, planned to have the company buy back these shares gradually to prevent any outsider from gaining significant influence. What they didn't know was that I had established a relationship with the founder years earlier. On quiet nights when he worked late, we'd occasionally chat. First about simple things, then gradually about our families, our backgrounds, and eventually the company itself. I never revealed the extent of my stock holdings, but he came to know me as more than just the janitor. When he decided to sell his shares, he contacted me discreetly. "Manuel," he said during our phone call, "I've watched Warner and his team run my company into the ground. The board won't stand up to him. I need a buyer who cares about Vertex's future, not just its quarterly profits." I took a deep breath. What if I found that buyer? He chuckled. "That would be quite something. The shares are valued at $87 million at current market price. And if someone could meet that price?" There was a pause. "Manuel, are you saying what I think you're saying?" "Let me make some calls," I replied. What the founder didn't know was that over 15 years, my initial investment had grown substantially. Additionally, I had helped several family members and friends from my community invest in Vertex based on my insights. Collectively, our holdings had reached nearly 20% of the company. With the founder's 40%, we could take control. I established an investment vehicle, Sierra Vista Partners, and pulled resources from my network. A sympathetic bank provided financing for the remainder, secured against the very shares we were purchasing. Within 30 days, the deal was complete. Sierra Vista Partners acquired the founder's entire stake, giving us effective control of Vertex Technologies. No announcement was made. No regulatory filings were required yet due to the structure of the transaction. The board and Warner remained oblivious that the company's ownership had fundamentally changed, which brings me to the shareholders' meeting that would change everything. As a shareholder, I had every right to attend the annual meeting, though I'd never exercised that right before. I registered under my own name, Manuel Reyes, and arrived wearing my only suit, purchased specifically for this occasion. The executives' reaction when they saw me enter the hotel ballroom was immediate and visceral. Warner's smile froze on his face as he nudged his CFO, Gerald Thompson. "What's the janitor doing here?" I overheard Thompson whisper as I walked past. Warner forced a smile. "Probably owns 10 shares. Everyone's an investor these days." I took a seat in the back row and observed quietly as shareholders filtered in. A few long-term investors nodded politely in my direction, recognizing me from my years of service in the building, but most ignored me entirely. As the meeting was about to begin, Thompson approached me, his expensive cologne arriving seconds before he did. "Mr. Reyes, isn't it?" he said with a condescending smile. "I didn't realize you were a shareholder." "For 15 years, I replied simply. He raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's commendable. Small investors are the backbone of American capitalism, aren't they? How many shares do you own, if you don't mind my asking?" "Enough to be here," I answered. His smile tightened. "Of course. Well, enjoy the meeting. But you might find some of the discussion a bit," he searched for the right word, technical. As he walked away, I heard him mutter to another executive, "Look, it's the janitor investor. Probably scraped together enough for a few shares." The boardroom erupted in quiet laughter. I maintained my composure, focused on what was about to unfold. Warner called the meeting to order with his typical flourish, presenting a rosy picture of the company's position despite mediocre financial results. He outlined expansion plans that would require significant capital investment and proposed a new executive compensation package that would substantially increase his own pay despite the stagnant stock price. During the question period, a few institutional investors raised concerns about declining margins and increasing customer churn, which Warner dismissed with practiced corporate speak about transitional phases and strategic repositioning. When no one else raised their hand, I did. The room fell silent as Warner reluctantly acknowledged me. "Yes, mister," in the back. "Reyes," I supplied. "Manuel Reyes." I could see Warner struggling to maintain his professional demeanor. "Yes, Mr. Reyes, your question?" "The company has spent $42 million on executive compensation over the past 2 years while reducing R&D spending by nearly 30%. During this same period, our main competitor has doubled their development budget and released 2 major product updates to R1. Could you explain how this strategy supports long-term shareholder value?" The precision of my question, and the data it contained, created a palpable tension in the room. Warner hadn't expected this level of insight from the night janitor. "Well," he stammered slightly, "executive talent is our most valuable asset, and retention requires competitive compensation. As for R&D, we focused on efficiency rather than raw spending numbers. Yet customer satisfaction scores have dropped from 92% to 76% in 18 months, I continued. And the average tenure of software engineers has declined from 4 years to 17 months. Warner's face darkened. "Mr. Reyes, with all due respect, these complex business decisions might be difficult to fully appreciate without a background in corporate management. Rest assured the board and executive team are acting in shareholders' best interests." Thompson, unable to contain himself, added loudly, "Perhaps Mr. Reyes should focus on his own job rather than second-guessing executives with decades of experience and advanced degrees. How many shares did you say you owned, sir? 5? 10? A few executives chuckled, though most shareholders looked uncomfortable at the naked condescension. I remained calm. "I believe in investing in what you know, Mr. Thompson, and after 15 years of working in your offices, I know Vertex Technologies quite well." Before Thompson could respond, the doors at the back of the ballroom opened and a woman in a crisp business suit entered, followed by 4 men carrying document boxes. She walked confidently to the front of the room and handed Warner an envelope. "What's this?" he asked, irritation clear in his voice at the interruption. "Regulatory filing," she replied loud enough for everyone to hear. Sierra Vista Partners has acquired 40% of Vertex Technologies' outstanding shares from the founders' family trusts. Combined with their existing holdings, they now control 58.7% of the company. Warner's face went pale. That's impossible. The board has first right of refusal on the founders' shares. This transaction cannot be valid. The board's right of first refusal expired 60 days after the initial offer. The woman, who I knew was Patricia Alvarez, one of the most respected corporate attorneys in the city, continued. That deadline passed 2 weeks ago. The transaction is complete and legally binding. Murmurs spread through the room as shareholders tried to process this dramatic development. Warner looked like he might be ill. Who is Sierra Vista Partners? He finally managed. Ms. Alvarez smiled slightly. Their managing partner is present and would like to address the shareholders. All eyes scanned the room, expecting someone to stand up from among the institutional investors, or perhaps for someone new to enter dramatically. Instead, I stood up quietly from my seat in the back row. I am Manuel Reyes, managing partner of Sierra Vista Partners and the new majority shareholder of Vertex Technologies. The silence that followed was absolute. Warner's mouth literally hung open. Thompson looked like he'd been struck. Several other executives who had laughed at me earlier stared in undisguised shock. I walked calmly to the front of the room. Thank you, Ms. Alvarez, and thank you, Mr. Warner, for chairing the meeting until now. As the representative of the majority shareholder, I'll be taking over. This is preposterous, Warner sputtered. You're the janitor. I smiled. I was the janitor. I'm also an MBA graduate, a long-term investor, and now the controlling shareholder of this company. Turning to address the room, I continued. For 15 years, I've watched this company grow from within. I've seen its strengths and its weaknesses from a perspective few others could. I've witnessed brilliant innovations dismissed because they came from lower-level employees. I've seen wasteful spending justified as executive necessity. I gestured to the document boxes Ms. Alvarez's team had brought in. These contain our detailed analysis of Vertex's current position and our plan to restore its competitive edge and shareholder value. Key elements include refocusing on R&D, implementing a more equitable compensation structure, and creating pathways for internal talent development. The institutional investors were already flipping through copies of the plan that were being distributed. Several were nodding with approval at what they read. As my first act as majority shareholder, I continued. I moved for the immediate restructuring of the board of directors and executive team. A hand went up. Martin Klein from Perimeter Capital, one of our largest institutional investors. Mr. Reyes, while this is certainly unexpected, your analysis is quite thorough. Perimeter Capital seconds the motion. Warner, finally recovering his voice, interjected frantically. This is a hostile takeover. You can't just walk in here and... It's not hostile, Mr. Warner. I corrected him calmly. It's capitalism. The very system you've explained to shareholders for years when justifying your compensation packages and cost-cutting measures. The majority shareholder is exercising its rights. Thompson, still processing his new reality, hissed, "You tricked us. You pretended to be just a janitor all these years." I turned to face him directly. I never pretended to be anything, Mr. Thompson. I was a janitor. I did my job with pride and dignity. You and others simply decided that meant I couldn't be anything else. Couldn't be educated, couldn't be ambitious, couldn't be an investor. That was your mistake, not my deception. The vote to restructure the board passed overwhelmingly. Warner, Thompson, and 3 other executives were removed from their positions, effective immediately. I appointed an interim CEO, Dr. Sophia Chen, our brilliant but overlooked head of product development who had been considering leaving for a competitor. As the meeting concluded and shell-shocked executives filed out, many shareholders came forward to introduce themselves. Some admitted they'd seen me for years but never said hello. Others expressed enthusiasm for the new direction outlined in our plan. Warner was the last to leave, stopping in front of me with a mix of anger and bewilderment. 15 years, he said. You cleaned my office for 15 years without saying a word about any of this. I spoke up many times, Mr. Warner, I replied. I submitted suggestions to the employee portal. I raised concerns during town halls. Once, I even sent a detailed analysis of our product vulnerabilities compared to competitors. You just never listened because of who you thought I was." He shook his head and walked out without another word. Later that evening, I returned to the Vertex offices, not to clean, but to meet with the interim leadership team. As I walked through the familiar hallways, now as the majority owner rather than the night janitor, employees stopped and stared. News had spread quickly. Maria from accounting, who had always smiled and said hello when others didn't, approached tentatively. "Mr. Reyes, is it true?" I smiled. "Please, it's still Manuel. But you own the company now?" "Sierra Vista Partners does," I clarified. "It represents investments from many people who believe in Vertex's potential, including several from our community." Her eyes widened. "Our community, you mean?" I nodded. "Many immigrants like us have been investing quietly for years. We see value where others don't because we've had to." In the coming weeks, Vertex Technologies underwent a transformation. We implemented a flatter management structure, redirected funds from excessive executive compensation to R&D, and launched an employee stock ownership program giving everyone, from developers to, yes, janitorial staff, a direct stake in the company's success. Most meaningfully, we established the Visible Innovation Program, creating dedicated channels for employees at all levels to contribute ideas. The program's motto, "Brilliance has no job title." 6 months later, Vertex released its most significant software update in years, incorporating several features developed by previously overlooked employees. Customer satisfaction scores began to climb. The stock price, stagnant for so long, rose 47% in the first quarter after the changes. As for me, I maintained my position as chairman of the board, but declined any executive role. My strength was in observation and long-term thinking, not day-to-day management. Dr. Chen excelled as CEO, bringing technical excellence and human understanding to the role. I still live in the same modest home, though I've paid off the mortgage. I drive the same 10-year-old car. Old habits of frugality die hard, and I've learned that true wealth isn't about displaying status, but about creating security and opportunity. Warner, I heard, took a position with a smaller competitor at half his previous salary. Thompson started a consulting business and struggled to attract clients. Several other former executives reached out about returning to Vertex, suddenly remembering my invaluable contributions to company culture. 1 year after the shareholders' meeting, we held a company-wide celebration of Vertex revitalization. Standing on the stage, looking out at employees from every department and level, I shared the lesson that had guided my journey. Success isn't about who speaks the loudest or sits in the biggest office, I told them. It's about who observes the most carefully, who invests, not just money, but time and attention, most wisely, and who recognizes value where others see only function. After the applause died down, a young woman from the maintenance staff approached me hesitantly. "Mr. Reyes, your story has inspired me," she said. "I'm studying computer science at night, but I wasn't going to tell anyone here because..." She trailed off. "Because you were afraid they'd only see your uniform, not your potential," I finished for her. She nodded. "What's your name?" I asked. "Gabriela Diaz." I smiled. "Well, Gabriela Diaz, I look forward to seeing your application to our developer internship program. And in the meantime, I suggest you start investing in the company, even if it's just a small amount at first." She looked surprised. "You think that's a good idea?" "The best investors," I told her, "are those who see the company from angles others miss. And sometimes the most valuable perspective is from the ground up." As she walked away with new confidence in her step, I thought about how much had changed in a year. Vertex Technologies was thriving not because I had taken control, but because we had finally tapped into the full potential of everyone who worked there, recognizing that brilliance, ambition, and insight can be found at every level of an organization, often hiding in plain sight. The executives had laughed at the janitor investor with his pathetic holdings. They never realized that while they were focused on their quarterly bonuses and corner offices, I was building something far more meaningful. A coalition of overlooked people who recognize value where others saw none. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one making the most noise, but the quiet one observing from the corner, perhaps even the one emptying the trash bins after everyone else has gone home.